Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend this ECOSOC webinar on green transitions and decent jobs. It's 6 o'clock precisely West African time, 7 p.m. in Amsterdam. Please remember, if you have any questions, kindly drop it in the chat box and it will be attended to in the course of the presentation. Thank you once again for joining in. I will now hand over to Victoria Mania, our moderator for today.
Thank you so much, Abra. Welcome everyone to today's side event, Green Transitions and Decent Jobs, Leveraging Youth Potential Through Labor-Based Incentives. You know, they say youth are the future of tomorrow, but the way things are going, we think that we'll need to fix the present, right? And that's why this session isn't just about a virtual meeting or just another virtual meeting. It's a declaration that Africa's youth are not just passengers in the green economy train. They are driving it, or at least demanding the keys to the train. We're here to spotlight how labor-based incentives, that is jobs, skills, things around paychecks, must sit at the center of the transition. And every transition strategy must take into consideration the needs and the priorities, the human needs and well-being. Because decarbonization without jobs, as quite a number of research has revealed, is just a fancier word for unemployment. So today you'll hear from some of the boldest voices, from policy influencers, from entrepreneurs, from grassroots warriors. We'll even open the mic for some real-time crowd wisdom, because I can see a number of you already raising your hands. Please be patient. We will come to you. But to get us officially fired up, let's hear from a woman who contributes to rewriting the green transition agenda. Rosemary Edem, she's the program manager for gender and youth at Sustainable Energy for All. Rosemary, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Victoria, for that kind introduction. And I also want to thank Victoria and Anika from Include for inviting me to this timely discussion. To provide some context, as introduced, my name is Rosemary Edem. I'm the program manager, gender and youth at ECOSOC for All, or Sustainable Energy for All, also known as ECOSOC for All. At ECOSOC for All, we work at the intersection of energy, climate, and development to achieve SDG 7, which is Goal 7, affordable and modern energy for all. Our mission also extends beyond energy access to reshaping economies, creating decent jobs, and building equitable societies. At ECOSOC for All, we see youth as one of the key cornerstones for accelerating the clean energy transition. As you know, globally, there are over 600 million people to date that lack access to electricity, with women and youth disproportionately affected. Women often bear the brunt of household energy needs, limiting the opportunities for education or income-generating activities. Meanwhile, on the other side, youth also face barriers to entering the renewable energy sector due to limited access to education, training, and resources. Currently, there are over 200 million youth. I'll say youth, I'll define it as people aged between 15 to 24. They are not in employment, education, and training. Out of that number, over 60% are women, or let's say young women. So excluding youth and women from the energy transition risk us losing their innovation, entrepreneurship, and skills, which are key drivers of progress in the green economy and transition. The green transition, as we know, offers immense potential and is already projected that by 2050, the clean energy industry could create 30 million jobs globally. So we must ensure that youth and women are equipped to fill these roles. These opportunities are also driven by ambitious initiatives like energy transition goals that countries have periodically been making for their targets, and also Mission 300, which is a recent initiative that is being co-led by the World Bank Group and the African Development Bank with the support of ECOSOC for All. Mission 300 is an initiative that aims to provide energy access to over to 300 million people in Africa by 2030, which will require the creation of jobs across engineering, finance, regulation, and policy, and more. M300 focuses on fostering local economic growth by creating jobs directly within communities where renewable energy projects are meant to be implemented. And it also presents an unparalleled opportunity to expand these jobs for youth, provided we invest in targeted efforts to equip them with the education, the skills, and training necessary to thrive in these roles. So to achieve an inclusive and just energy transition by 2030, bold commitments are needed globally, nationally, and at community levels. Globally, we already have robust frameworks like the Paris Agreement and the SDGs, which provide a foundation for action. So reaffirming our commitments to global development goals is essential for driving productive conversations and meaningful change. To complement this, we must create financial mechanisms with the gender and youth inclusion lens, which includes innovative financing that targets women-led businesses. I'll give an example like ECOSOC Universal Energy Facility, which is already doing that, as well as youth-led businesses. Investing in capacity building for these businesses is essential to ensure that when the recipients receive this funding support, they can use it to empower themselves economically and sustainably. Furthermore, collaboration between governments, the private sector, international organizations, and NGOs are also critical. This conversation must be informed by sex and age disaggregated data, which will lead to evidence-based equitable policies that focus on women, youth, workforce development, and decent jobs. It's imperative that these global commitments are translated into tangible actions at both the national, subnational, and local levels with clearly defined targets, indicators, financial mechanisms for gender and youth inclusion and other marginalized groups. Nationally, government have to design gender and youth responsive policies that promote equal employment opportunities in green industries while ensuring access to STEM education for young women. Action should also support green entrepreneurship through improved mentorship programs and financing options. At the community level, it's crucial to support community-led renewable energy initiatives that involve youth and women in planning, implementation, and their governance. Empowering these groups to become leaders in their communities through training, resource sharing, and accessible platforms of participation is essential for fostering local ownership and ensuring long-term sustainability of these energy projects. At ESI for All, one of our key programs is the STEM traineeship program, which empowers young women in Africa and Latin America with technical training and professional development. This traineeship has already supported women with the skills to implement solar PV systems, comply with regulations, and work with governments on energy transition plans. So finally, let me end by speaking about labor-based incentives. Labor-based incentives can serve as a powerful tool for creating decent jobs within the green economy. These incentives can be designed to align workforce needs with green economy demands, focusing on skills for renewable energy installation, maintenance, and operations. At ESI4All, we have learned that successful programs usually combine technical training with business skills development, mentorship opportunities, and access to funding, all while adapting to the evolving demands such as digitalization and emerging technologies. So as we gather here at this 2025 ECOSOC Youth Forum, let us all recognize the indispensable role of youth and women in driving a sustainable energy future. So by working together with a shared vision and commitment, we can harness the potential of youth, young women to accelerate the global green transition, create millions of decent jobs, and build a more equitable, sustainable future for everyone. Of course, powered by inclusion. Thank you. Back to you, Victoria.
Thank you so much, Rosemary, for that. And indeed, it is quite an important work that the SC4All is doing. And I hope that people, the students, the young people who are listening to us right now, would have, picked one or two things from what Rosemary has said. Speaking of productive conversations, because two things that Rosemary emphasized were conversations, but conversations that lead to action. And to take us further, having heard Rosemary ground us in purpose and urgency, next is another brilliant woman who doesn't just walk the talk, she publishes it as research. and she supports evidence synthesis for informed policymaking. Please welcome Dr. Anika Altaf, the Executive Director for Include Knowledge Platform, for her keynote today. Anika?
Let me start by saying that today I want to invite us all to reframe how we view the green transition. And I don't want us to see it as a race to net zero, but more as a collective negotiation about who gets to build that future. For far too long, the global narrative on climate action has focused on decarbonization, on innovation and technology. And yes, of course, these elements are crucial. But I also think that equally vital is something that I call social scaffolding of that transition. For instance, who is trained to install solar panels? Who gets access to the financing? Who is creating policies and not just implementing them? So Include has been actively pushing for this scaffolding. For example, at the UN Summit of the Future, where we brought attention to how gender and youth inclusion are not afterthoughts, but they are really preconditions for any sustainable system. And we challenged the idea that technical skills alone can really deliver energy access. We also showed how localized training, inclusive financing, and social ownership models are equally critical. And at COP29, we made clear that if low carbon policies are not accompanied by labor-based incentives, then Africa's youth will remain bystanders in a race that they didn't start, but that they have to finish. So we advocated for policies rooted in lived realities, not just lofty targets. And we call for investment in people, not just panels. And I think together we have to ask ourselves a couple of questions today. Why are we still designing climate policies for youth instead of with youth? Why is 70% of Africa's population under 30 years, but less than 3% of climate funding is directly accessible for youth-led initiatives? And why are clean energy strategies silent on jobs when unemployment is the real climate crisis in our communities? Now, if these questions make you uncomfortable, then good, they should, because discomfort is often the beginning of a transformation. And I want us to be very clear about this. This transition is not going to happen by default. We have to design it to be just. So at Include, we've seen how even small shifts can transform communities. For example, through localized training programs in Nigeria, youth-led solar cooperatives in Ghana, and inclusive data practices in South Africa. But these examples cannot remain isolated sparks. We really need to institutionalize them. So we're not just calling for change, we're convening coalitions, we're synthesizing evidence, and co-creating the blueprints with young people. And we can't do that alone. We need governments to reimagine policies. We need funders to reallocate risks. And most important of all, we need you, youth, to refuse to be tokenized. We want to move from margin to movement, from short-term projects to long-term sustainable systems. And that's exactly why we have this panel today. And I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to listen and learn from inspiring young panel members today. And to the audience, I'd like to say, please engage in the chat or otherwise reach out to us so we can include your thoughts and ideas as we move forward in making our future green and, most importantly, just. So thank you all and enjoy the panel.
Thank you so much for that insightful keynote. And that fiery keynote is the word I was looking for. Anika has said, refuse to be tokenized. And I think that is one big takeaway from today, or another big takeaway added to the insights shared by Rosemary, that you need to refuse to be tokenized. The next thing is for us to share some ideas, bringing some ideas into the room. So this infographic, before we begin the panel, is a distilled gem includes insight from the field, where we have asked experts to share some opportunities for young people. What you see on this slide is a live map of opportunities pulled from youth-led research and innovation across Nigeria, across Ghana, across Uganda, South Africa, Kenya, Sierra Leone, and beyond, is based on what we've learned from includes research and conversations with hundreds of young change makers asking, where are the ideas? The answer is short. They are not just out there in the air. They are already being built from the ground up. Let me walk you through a few ideas that are green, that are grassroots, that are grounded in reality, so that at least if you leave here, you're looking for a side hustle. As Nigerians will say, your urgent 2K. You have an idea of where to begin, you know. Well, let's start with energy. In off-grid communities, and I'm sure Alexander, who is a successful entrepreneur in this area, will speak more to it. But in off-grid communities, reselling solar mini kits or setting up solar phone charging stations isn't just a business, it's a lifeline. On campuses, students are turning the poor electricity situation into profit by becoming solar resellers in their hostels. These are young people creating access where the traditional grid has failed. Rosemary emphasized some examples within the work that they do, or around the work that they do at SC for All. And this speaks to, you know, what I'm talking about, that young people are creating access to energy where the grid has failed. In the circular economy, we've seen the rise of plastic waste for cash hubs and compost production. Simple systems where youth collect, sort, they sell waste for income. It's low tech and it's high impact, and you make some money from it. So added to that is also phone and gadget repair. A number of respondents to our research actually mentioned this as an important hustle that reduces e-waste. It stretches the life of devices, because, you know, a lot of people can't afford to replace their devices, right? But what they also do is to create another stream of income for the young people that are getting involved. Then there's fashion and storytelling. In the registration, I saw a lot of young women, especially, asking if we're going to be talking about upcycled clothing, if we're going to be talking about fashion. Yes, indeed, upcycled clothing, accessories, thrifts, reselling, you know, green digital services, they are all booming on social media. So if you're creative, you can make eco-conscious content. You can become a green influencer, showing others how to live sustainably in a way that actually makes sense to their lives. And it's not just about going viral, it's about going green and making money. We also see young people going back to the soil, literally, from urban micro farming kits to home and hostel based gardens. So food is being grown in containers, on balconies, on rooftops, and they're sold locally. You know, they're consumed by these people that are growing them, but they're also sold locally. If we throw in eco courier, you know, on bikes, green pair educators, event decor providers, what you have is a decentralized youth-led ecosystem building from ground up in Africa. And it's quite interesting because these aren't dollar startups. They are everyday ideas that solve real problems and generate real income. They turn climate action into community action. And the best part is they don't wait for permission. So as we enter our next segment, I invite you to look at the panel not as a discussion, but as opportunities hackathon, where, this voices from private sector, development space, and civil society, are present. And if you're still wondering, where are the jobs? Where's the funding? Victoria hasn't mentioned what I want to hear. Where are the policies that actually listen, like Anika emphasized? Then the panel will give us a deeper understanding. They are distinguished, they are disruptive, they are determined, and they are downright important. And to take us further, let's start with the introductions. And Abra, I think we can stop sharing our screen now. We have Grace Vanderpue. She is the program analyst at UNDP Rwanda. We also have Alexander Obechina. He is CEO at Cobb Lighting Technology Limited. We have Margaret Mansare. She's the founder, Women in Energy Sierra Leone. And then lastly, we have Terry Ann Awo. She's the pillar lead for Women Climate Action and Livelihood. Panelists, you're all welcome, and it's a pleasure to be moderating the session to get us started. I think at this point, it will be important for us to have the panelists pinned. So to get us started, let's do a bit of time travel back to the beginning, because behind every impact story, there is a decision, a challenge, or a moment of, if I call it madness, that changed everything. And I'll start with you, Margaret. You have built Women in Energy from ground up. And if you had to tell the story of Women in Energy Sierra Leone in just 3 quick sentences, what would they be?
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So, if I'm asked to describe women in energy in 3 words, I will start with passion. That is going through all odds, because it's only for women by us bringing real life solution to the problem we face. And then secondly, I will go with the drive, me being intimate with my solution, why I want to do it and why it's most important. Because for me, it's not energy is not about convenience, it's about life and death. And then thirdly, I would say goal. Like, it's the most important thing for me, like ensuring that women step up to find exactly what we need in reducing our energy poverty. So I hope that answers my question.
That does. Women step up. And Margaret, I think what you have highlighted is basically that if you do not do it for yourself, nobody's coming to save you. You have to do it yourself. You have to be your own hero in your own story. So thank you for that compelling insight, Margaret. It's clear that behind every success story, there is indeed a struggle, but more so a breakthrough, which comes from your agency as a person. Alexandra, this brings us to you. Looking back, what's one decision that made the biggest impact on your journey as a green entrepreneur?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Victoria. Thank you, Anika, for this wonderful opportunity. For me, I would say, one, passion takes a very, very big place. Why do I say that? I say that because from my background, basically, I don't have an engineering background. So there has to be that passion, because there's always that time and that phase where, you put in all the efforts, you put in all the time, all the resources, you're not seeing anything coming out as expected. So I would say passion comes first. There must be a very, very strong passion. And secondly, that passion also has to be backed up with reality. What is it that drives your passion, right? So beyond the passion, there are statistics to back up the fact that this industry is a thriving industry. There is a huge energy deficit across the sub-Saharan Africa. Your passion must be realistic. You must come to reality with it. You understand it? You cannot just be, oh, I'm passionate. No, you are passionate. As much as you're passionate, you must take into account what the reality is around you, and what is actually driving you. So for me, I would say passion plays a very critical role. Understanding your business, your environment, understanding the ecosystem you're playing in, and also more importantly, defining what you're actually coming out to do, in terms of, is it a solution? Is it a problem you're trying to solve? So I would say, passion takes a very big place first, then every other thing can actually come.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Passion and also know your environment. Indeed, I have seen very brilliant ideas that didn't fit into the environment where they were started, right? So it's very important for us to know the market that we want to serve and to know the solution, or well, to make sure that the solutions speak to the needs. It adds value to the context where we are. Thank you for that bold take, Alexander. Now, Grace, you work in systems, but systems are made up of people. So what's the most overlooked barrier when it comes to including vulnerable populations like women, youth, and persons living with disability in this development conversation? And I ask this because Margaret has emphasized taking agency. Alexander has said your passion, and make sure you are serving a purpose within your context. But beyond that, what about systems?
Good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Victoria. Thank you so much, Anika. So I'd like to say that one of the most overlooked barriers has to do with the lack of a holistic and wraparound support system for women, for youth, for persons with disabilities that are the most vulnerable groups. And we've come to notice in the development space that most of our economic frameworks actually give people, or the most actually neglects the psychosocial and then the legal and societal dimensions that condition true inclusion. So with the kind of work that we do, we've actually noticed that training and grants are not enough. So it's important that we actually provide these things. And so without addressing social norms, low literacy rates, and then lack of inclusive infrastructure, it's actually going to be difficult to take them out of their vulnerabilities. So for us, tools like the gender action learning systems have actually helped us by embedding community-driven development and social and goal setting to actually do our work. And in so doing, we can generally see that a truly economic framework must go beyond income, because we always look towards income. A truly economic framework must actually enable voice, it must actually enable dignity, and it must also enable agency. In so doing, would actually go beyond integrating these vulnerable populations, but what we are going to do is that we are going to empower them to also be part of their development journeys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. That's a very clear picture. Whatever you are doing, if it doesn't have impact through enabling voices, enabling dignity, that is such a wholesome thing to say, because I think it's one thing that we forget. We go to the field, a lot of the development initiatives take pictures with these people. We don't even ask, in many cases, you wonder if people really want to be taking pictures when you are helping them with, little supplies here and there. So when helping people, we need to really emphasize dignity. Not just that, also their voices and their agency. Thank you so much, Grace. To take us further, let's talk about thriving, not just surviving. And within this space, the skills, the grids, the things that they don't teach you in school or even at a climate summit. And I'll begin with Terry. You work at the intersection of gender, energy, and climate. What do you believe these issues, or why do you believe these issues can't be solved in silos?
Thank you so much, Victoria. One, I want to say that gender, energy, climate must be tackled together. They're interlocked systems of oppression and opportunity, one. And even if you talk about energy poverty, it is gendered. So ideally, I think there's a report that was done and it says 600 million African women still cook with toxic fuel. So that is firewood, that is charcoal. This causes annually 500,000 deaths from indoor air pollution, more than malaria. So you imagine how bad it is. So let's talk about even women's labor fuel resilience. In my community, women are the ones who manage water, they manage waste, they manage food systems daily. So when climate change disasters hit, women are the first responders. But look at even how they are excluded from energy policy making. They're all excluded. Even you talk about bringing climate action to grassroots communities, women have to also be in that setup. So there's no way we can talk about climate change and not talk about gender and the whole energy ecosystem. They're all gendered systems of inequalities, and women bear the brunt as it stands. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Terry. Energy poverty is gendered. We need to underline that. And this is a profound statement to make, because it means that the system is already rigged against some people. So does it mean that no matter what they do, they would never make it within this sector? And to answer a part of this question, given these issues, Alexander, you have, if you permit me to say, become a successful entrepreneur within this space. What are the key skills that young people need to make it within the renewable energy sector, not just technically, but also mentally?
Yeah. So I would say, it's such, for me, I would say mentorship is a very critical one. I think there is a need for every stakeholder involved in the renewable energy space to understand the very critical role mentorship has to play if we must, groom the right workforce that is required, because currently, if you look at the industry, I would be very honest with you, looking at the huge energy deficit, that cuts not just Nigeria. Yes, Nigeria is the largest in the sub-Saharan region. Currently, we do not have the requisite manpower, skilled manpower that is required to be able to meet that project deployment that will cover that huge energy gap across the sub-Saharan region. So I would say it's that time critical stakeholders start looking at the place of mentorship. You understand? For those who are looking at it, because to be honest with you, I had the privilege of learning from someone. I had the privilege of, going through the ropes, understanding how these things work. And more importantly, again, it's also very critical, the role of capacity building. We never stop learning. There's an adage that says, we never stop learning until we die. So we keep learning. We must be very intentional in terms of capacity building, because I say it, in the next 10 years, if we even have all the funding, the huge funding deficits required, if we have it available today, the role of skilled manpower in accelerating energy access, will still continue to play a very, very, very big role. So I would say for anyone who is aspiring, be very, very intentional in terms of capacity building. Learn from the ropes, you understand. Mentorship is very critical to seeing how well we build this. And I bet you, the sky would be the starting point.
Thank you, Alexander. That was a motivational response there. And I think that even I am encouraged. Anika, maybe I should pivot into energy entrepreneurship and leave include to you. But Alexander has mentioned mentors, capacity building, and I think that these are twin factors that we underestimate. It's possible for you to have the capacity, but then without mentors, you may not go far. It's also possible for you to have mentors, but mentors cannot give you the capacity if you really don't have it, if you don't want to be building it yourself, right? So your agency comes to play here. Now to young African women who think the energy sector isn't for them. Margaret, what would you say? Building on Alexander's previous statement.
For me, it's quite interesting from what Alexander was saying. But the only thing, the most important thing we should keep in mind is that us women, we face the most difficult challenges, and we don't need to like babysit who to be involved. Like, we need to be involved in terms of policy. We need more capacity building trainings. I remember the time we were doing our training for the SC for All, like solarizing hospitals. Like, when we were there, like you could see like a lot of mommies like losing their life, children, and they get so emotional saying that what they are doing is like saving more women out of their lives. Like, it could be you, it could be me. So it's high time we be more intentional, that I'm not just doing this for myself, but I'm doing it to save. It could be my sister, it could be my mom. So we need to step out. We need more women in the energy space. Like, I cannot do it alone. It's a whole workforce space. And it's like no one should be left behind. Everyone should be included. Like, find an intimate solution that, come rain, come shine, I want to be part of this problem, because I know when I solve this problem, I'm not just doing it for convenience. I'm saving my fellow women. I'm saving children, because we are the most vulnerable to energy poverty. So, as my first statement, like, it's high time we step up for us women by us. So, to young women out there, I encourage you all to be actively involved in the energy space. There are so many opportunities out there. SC4 is doing like women in STEM training yearly. You could like take advantage and be more enlightened about energy access and how you can be part of the solution. So, and for those that don't have any like I can say illiterate, for those that don't have, because one thing about solving energy poverty is not just about being an engineer or being lettered. You can still be in your little corner and encourage more women to have access to clean energy, like raising more awareness. So it's high time, whether you're an engineer or you're not, like you're just like any older women, I feel like everybody should be involved. And to policies maker out there, I feel like those vulnerable women should not be left out to be part of this decision making, because that's the only way where you see them being actively involved and they not being feel like they are left out of the cry we are facing right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We need to include people while they are striving to be included. That's quite an important one, Margaret. All right, let's get real. The energy transition ambition is cute until somebody has to pay for it. So let's talk revenue, let's talk power, let's talk how to break into boardrooms where decisions and dollars happen. Alexander, we'll start with you. How did you secure funding for your business? And what would you say to young people chasing capital in spaces that seem closed off?
Thank you very much, Victoria. I wonder if I could be able to do good justice to this, but I'll try. I think funding in this part of the world plays a very critical role, because from a sectorial point of view, you would understand that such huge infrastructure projects would require very, very critical debt funding. I see myself basically starting, running the company as an individual, funding primarily from equity, with little support here and there, no doubt. But when it gets very critical is where you really want to scale. You then understand that building an organization is beyond yourself as an individual. Then you start looking at aspects that has to do with building the right corporate governance structure, for people to see your entity beyond your individual self, and this, and it's a phase, there was a time when, basically, there was no very high regards for local companies. I would be very honest with you, because the perceived notion and perception was the fact that these guys can't do it. They lack the technical skills. And we broke the genes, Look at the World Bank projects that has to do with Nigeria, the Nigeria Electrification Project, which was initially a $250 million project. It will amaze you to know that local indigenous companies, were able to access more than 70% of that funding. It's never been done across Africa before. But what does that demonstrate? It demonstrates that if a set of individuals understand their reality and are very intentional about it, knowing fully well that, see, you are not just building an empire for yourself as an individual. You are building an ecosystem that will outlive you. Mm-hmm. Then this attracts funding. The investors will always be there to want to invest, be it, from a perspective of equity funding, be it from a debt financing perspective, be it whichever, mezzanine, concessional debt, whichever. At the heart and peak of this funding comes a critical due diligence. A due diligence that you may be very shocked, as board members or as board of directors, or as directors of these companies, your lifestyle, how you live it, are you a very frugal person with resources? Are you someone, you live a lavish lifestyle that you cannot sustain? So many things comes into play when you want to do this. But I will be very, very honest with you. I've seen, young companies like myself, distinguish themselves, do things very well. At that pace where you start building, sustaining yourself, there's this metaphor that says for every business that goes in the Nigerian environment, you sustain yourself beyond 5 years. It shows that there is still a little hope that you can still live more. So I would say the business environment, no doubt, is tough, but the ability to be very intentional, discipline as well. Discipline is very, very, very critical in this sector, because you would understand that the investments that we are doing are not a quick return on investment. These are investments that take a long time. We started raising commercial debts. From commercial debts, now we're going towards concessional debts that we understand that will take a very long time for these projects to be able to pay back. So I think people who aspire to raise funding, you must first of all make some level of sacrifice. Start with that little 100,000, 50,000 you have, that's 1 million you have, whatever you have. I had to basically start putting in equity before we even started thinking of raising debt. And, the path to equity investment is just very close, but you must be very intentional, know what you're doing at every stage of your business life cycle.
Absolutely. I guess at this point, Alexander, 4 things that you've said: that you're building an ecosystem that will outlive you. This is a consciousness you have to build within yourself as an entrepreneur, yes? Secondly, you said investment in this space takes some time. That's quite an interesting statement to make vis-a-vis your earlier statement about investors being around. It means they're looking around, waiting to see how much of equity you want to invest in yourself before they invest in you. And of course, that's the safest way to go. Why would I invest in someone who is not ready to invest in themselves? So that's an important point. You also said make some sacrifices. We all know a thing or two about sacrifices. And lastly, you said start with the little that you have. Several people sent me questions before the session, and they said things like, I don't have a lot of money. How do I start? And I guess if you're listening, if you're one of those who sent this question, Alexander has said, start with the little you have. He mentioned 100K. Alexander, I wonder if there is also a 50K, 20K, well, maybe for some of the ideas that I had mentioned earlier, selling solar lamps and, or distributing solar lamps, upselling, content creating. These have very little barriers to entry. And maybe you start from one and move up to heights like Alexander has obtained. Now, to Grace. Alexander talked about revenue generation. He talked about investments. But let's talk a bit about what is trending within the development space now. Aid is being cut back as we speak. Grace, ironically, development is often donor-led. And you wonder if aid is being cut back, are we not leaving people behind if we are taking Rosemary's words verbatim? How do we shift the needle towards locally owned strategies that reflect our current context within the development space?
Thank you very much, Victoria. So I believe that the path to local ownership should start with co-creation and capacity building, and not top-down conditionalities as we always see in the development space, where people give money and actually, dictates to how we should use these monies. And so far, for the work that we have done so far, we've actually seen that collaboration with local CSOs, cooperatives, and private sector, we've come to see that sustainable outcomes actually arise when local actors lead. So, for instance, we've worked with over 115 CSOs where we've actually given them training. So, back to what Alexander was saying about, and what you were also saying about people not knowing what to do. Sometimes people have businesses, but even do not know how to mobilize resources. So some of the things that we did was to train them on financial management and also on resource mobilization, where some of them actually were able to raise these funds on their own without actually coming through us. And also we've been able to work with the private sector, work hand in hand with them to actually develop internship programs for persons with disabilities so that they would be able to go into the workspace. We've also had the opportunity to work with cooperatives. And so these participatory approaches actually leads to local innovation. And so we can see that, and not dependency. So for us to scale this, continent-wide, we would actually have to align our development financing as a continent to our national development plans and also our green transition plans, and back them with accountability mechanisms, because if we don't have the accountability mechanisms in place, that is where we have issues of corruption. So yeah, that's what I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Grace. Grace has said not top-down conditionalities, right? But co-creation and capacity building. In this session, I think capacity building is no longer a buzz phrase. We've listened to Grace, we've listened to Alexander, we've listened to Terry, we've listened to Margaret. Everyone has mentioned capacity building. And so maybe we need to think more about this. Well, one other thing that Grace said that really hit a nerve is When local actors lead, sustainable outcomes rise. That's something I will take home today. So let's bring it back home, literally, because if the transition policies that Grace mentioned earlier doesn't make sense on someone's kitchen table, it might not make sense at all. So to Terry, in many African communities, women still rely on firewood and charcoal. What's really standing in the way of clean and healthy energy access at the grassroots?
Yeah, thank you so much. And just to add, to put a rider to what I think it's Margaret who talked about even women's role in energy. I'd even like to talk about the barriers first before I talk on other barriers. So most green initiatives in climate, so let's talk about solar energy, waste recycling, they require technical skills. So a lot of young women, I'll talk about my community because that is where I know best. I've been born and raised in Kibera, and that is what I know best. So a lot of young women, we face limited access to STEM and vocational training. Let's even intersection it with unpaid care work. So that is childcare, household labor. These are restrictive to women's ability to participate fully in training and part-time green jobs. Most green jobs are male-dominated industries, which exclude women due to cultural biases and safety concerns. But also there's a lot of financial barriers. So even the high upfront cost, renewable energy systems, that is solar, there's wind, there's hydro, they require significant initial investment. So even if they save money long term, many low income households or even in rural communities cannot afford these costs. There is also limited access to credit. There's lack of microloans, there's lack of grants, financing options that are specifically tailored to marginalized groups. So this makes it so hard for us to adopt clean energy. But also there's a lot of issue on bureaucratic red tape on policies. We have in some regions, for example, let's even talk about utility monopolies. In some regions, utilities resist decentralized energy. So, for example, net metering restrictions to probably protect their profits. There's also technical and infrastructure challenges. Talk about maintenance, even on skill gap, grid limitations. So remote and undeserved areas, for example, where I come from, often we lack grid infrastructure or even technical and logistical hurdles that will help us even get this energy, and even the technological mismatch. So, for example, even getting off-the-shelf solutions like large solar panels may not even fit our needs, for example, as people coming from Kibera. But also, just to bring it back home and each higher, let's even talk about the awareness gap. Do people know of other options of energy that exist? Misinformation in my community, for example, there's lack of education about clean energy and how at the long run, for example, it is cheaper. Communities are definitely resistant to change. Changing a system is very, very hard. We are heavily reliant on traditional fuels, that is wood, kerosene, and getting new technology.
I think we've lost Terry there for a minute. Hopefully she comes back. But we will move to Margaret. Margaret, just like Alexander had said earlier, people often say Africa is a tough place to do business. Do you agree? And quickly, how have you personally navigated that terrain?
Thank you very much. That's a very powerful question. I always live to answer every day. Doing business in Africa has its own set of unique challenges. That is limited access to finance, unreliable infrastructure, we have inconsistent policy, and at times gender bias. But then again, that doesn't mean there is no like possibilities to overcome. So Africa is an untapped ground. Like there are real life solutions out there, and for us, we cope by like staying deeply connected to the communities we serve. As our market strategy is that we learn, what the problem is. We engage them to get their feedbacks. We give them feedbacks or experience to have access to energy, clean energy. And from this on their feedbacks, experience, like exciting experience we get from them, we take it from there. So I don't see it as a challenge, but I see it as an opportunity for me to engage more and learn. Because if we tend to like focus more on the problem that it's very impossible to do business in Africa, it is impossible. There are a lot of things. It's not only by my own power that I can do that, because setting policy in place, you need government, you need everyone. But then again, I try to like use what we have to get what we want. For example, for the smart bin stove that we produce, it's locally built in Sierra Leone and materials are accessible. We use our insulator from coconut fibers and we use ceramic available. So it was intentional, like finding what we have to build the solutions we are having. Because if we tend to like wait for us to like find materials that are not accessible or it's not easily to be adaptable, because we don't learn what the problem is. So it's difficult for you to bring solution to do business about what you don't know what the people want, or how can this solution be adaptable. So I think that is how women in energy have been surviving. We save today to survive tomorrow.
Absolutely. One thing I'll take away again from what you've just said is start incomplete. You can't wait until you have everything that you need
Yes,
before you start.
absolutely.
That is profound. Now, to Grace, what's one bold idea? Because Margaret has just said problems are opportunities, right? And they're hidden in plain sight. So, what's one bold idea you believe could transform Africa's development landscape, especially within energy and if implemented at large scale?
Thank you very much, Victoria. I think that early on, Anika actually made mention to this. So I was actually smiling when she was talking about it. I believe that investing in people systematically, intentionally, and at scale is the boldest thing that Africa could do for its development. It's actually undeniable that the continent sits on, a vast of natural resources. I think that currently is estimated, if I'm not wrong, at around 6.4 trillion United States dollars. But it is actually people who are empowered, skilled, and supported that can actually shift this potential into prosperity. So I believe that for Africa's green transition, we need to match our Africa's green transition with human capital development. And human capital should not be a priority for us, because you can see that for countries that have made it, human capital is the foundation on which inclusive, resilient, and then sustainable economies are built on. So in our one key focus area for our green transition has to be skill anticipation, because we keep on talking about green transition, but we actually need to make a skill anticipation for sectors that will be affected. And then when we do that, we actually put in place education, curricular systems in place to make sure that we train young people. So in conclusion, I'd just like to say that Africa's green transition should be matched with the skills revolution. And we can do that by future-ready education, inclusive training, and the bold human capital development. And this is the only way that I believe is the surest path to prosperity. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Grace. And building on that, Alexander, in a few words, how can young entrepreneurs spot opportunities in the green economy that others might miss?
So I would say you cannot just sit down and, opportunities will locate you. I would say the appetite for getting very vital information should be uptight. Networking is also a very, very critical ways that I feel they can actually be able to tap and understand. It is only when you understand the size of market where you are, my basic, basic in terms of studies, this taught me that and training. That it is only when you can see it, envision it, that you can actually believe that, see, okay, I know what I'm doing. So I would say young people should try as much as possible as they can to network. Start it, be it from your school social group, be it an engineering departmental association stuffs, even out of it. We have different groups. Today you can be a member of the associations that has to do with renewable energy without being a major developer. Try as much as possible to expose yourself to those avenues where you meet people who have this experience. Interact, exchange ideas, share your cards. You never can tell. So for me, I would tell you, networking played a very critical role for me in my very early days when I was stepping into this sector. Because imagine, how does a young guy who just came out of political science and probably had an MBA was able to start navigating and running, a renewable energy company? And for me, the task is simple. Arm myself with people who I know have the right capacity, have the right knowledge, have the experience, and have the qualification to be able to do this exercise. It's not just about the money, because sometimes, the money is not just the money. It's not just the money. Everybody has money. Dangote today is probably the richest man in Africa, but he's not the highest investor in renewable energy. And you keep asking yourself why, right? So people keep saying, the big companies are coming in. No, there is a roadmap to every sector. People are there. He no matter his money, he will still have to look through the roadmaps. You understand it? And rely on expertise, those who have the right expertise to be able to do it. You get it? So I would say, rather than talk, match it with action. Match it with actions. Step out there, network, meet people, and take the bold steps. And the sky would just be your starting point.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alexander. Alexander says, don't sit down at home. If you are watching this webinar or this session or this side event from your home, Alexander says you shouldn't be doing that. Say you should be out there, going out there, giving out your cards. If you don't have cards, create digital cards. Talk to people, network, right? You are as good as the network around you, as the people around you. That's what I've learned from what Alexandra has said about opportunities. We have quite a number of questions. I think we should just quickly go to our powerful closes, our one-liners. In one sentence, what myth about youth green jobs or Africa do you want to bust today? I'll start with Terry. You're on mute. So while we wait for Terry,
Sorry, I'm
yes.
here, Victoria. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what I want to say is about green transitions and green jobs. I think I'd like to unmyth the jargons that are there and even just center what green transition, for instance, what it means in our community. It's more than just climate goals. It represents a chance to radically transform the lives of vulnerable groups, young women, people living with HIV, those living in urban informal settlements. So because for these communities, green transition is just not about reducing emissions. It's about creating new livelihoods that are safe, that are dignified, that are sustainable. It's about replacing exploitative or harmful work. And what I'd like to demystify is the picture that is painted globally. Because when I talk about even decent green jobs in my community, I look at a woman that is growing food in a vertical garden, that is using recyclable containers and earning an income from it. I see a youth trained in installing solar panels, or is even repairing clean cooking stove. I see, in Kenya, we call them mama mboga. I see a mama mboga switching to sustainable packaging and getting access to finance because her business is now climate smart. I see a waste recycler that is part of a cooperative. So I would like to demystify how they paint green transition to the picture of people that are mostly affected by climate change in urban informal settlements, for instance, in the geopolitical south. So that is what I'd like to demystify. What is on paper, what is on conference room vis-a-vis what is on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry. I think we should move to Margaret. Quickly, in one sentence. Terry's sentence was quite long, but also
Okay,
quite insightful. So thank you.
okay, I will keep it short. So this is just an interesting thing. So whenever I show up for work, like when we have solar installations or the cook stove we manufacture, the question I get is like, go and call your boss, like my engineers, like the male, because it's not possible for women to do this type of work. It's not your thing. You're a lady, you're beautiful and smart. So that myth of not seeing women being actively involved in creating solution or doing my own design or installing panels myself, whilst in fact I'm the CEO and founder of my company. I designed solution, I designed my stove, and then I designed the solar system we have. So that's a whole myth. We need to like accept the fact that there are other young women out there that are doing great things in the green space.
Victoria, you're muted.
Sorry, I said absolutely. There are women within this sector. For those who are watching, women who are watching, here you have several women in this sector. And for the men that are watching, and who know other men that do not think, or other people that do not think this sector is meant for women, well, here you go. I think the next person will be Grace.
Yes, so thank you. I think mine will be very fast. So I think that the myth that I would like to bust has to do with the fact that African youth are mere, job seekers in the renewable energy space. But when in fact African youth are innovators, they are builders, and they are thriving already in the renewable space. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Sharp and very loaded. The other person is Alexander. We lost you for a bit, but we're glad you're back. Alexander, in one quick, short sentence, what is one myth that you would like to whittle down today?
I think the path to energy transition is very clear. And I say to every young teaming individual passionate about taking a bold step in this sector, if you can really, really dream it, if you can think very hard about it, just work hard towards it. I believe you're just one step away from achieving that dream and that vision that you want to. Never stop pushing, and the sky would only be your starting point.
Alexander likes to say the sky will be your starting point. I think Alexander wants to move into
into the moon.
But yes, radical transformation. If this panel has taught us anything, it's that youth are waiting to be included. They are not waiting to be included, sorry, and they are already building. We've had the barriers, but more importantly, we've had the breakthroughs. And now it's on us to make sure that these stories become systems and these voices become power. Re-echoing what Grace had said. Okay, folks, to our audience, your mic might be muted, but your voice is not. Let's light up the chat like it's Twitter. We have quite a number of questions. Some have already been answered, but I'll just read through. Will the recording be shared with us Yes, the recording is shared. My internet is not so good. Yes, the recording will be shared with you. The other is from Natasha. Will the recording be shared? Yes, the recording will be shared. I think a lot of us are having network issues, but yes, the recording will be shared. Steven says, does Africa have a repository of actors in this space? Do we have the data for employers, entrepreneurs, trainers, NGOs, and donors in the ecosystem? Grace, do you want to take a stab at this question? I figured you knew I was gonna call you.
Well, this is, a dicey question. It's not something I'll say a yes or a no to, but I believe that, platforms such as, SC for All and other, renewable energy spaces that are coming up are definitely doing something in that space. So we could actually go and speak more to these stakeholders as to whether they have, a repository of people within the space. But I definitely cannot give a yes or a no answer to it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Do we have a repository in silos? Like different organizations have repositories of actors. Even at Include, we have repositories of actors, and I think at UNDP as well, you do have repositories of actors, but there is no one single database where you can find all of these actors, and it could be something or an idea that Grace and her people at UNDP can look into. So Grace, we're sending you back to your people to tell them that we need to bring, this database into one. The next question is from Ohu Habakkuk, and he says, how and where can findings be accessed to empower youths that are jobless in the space? There are quite a number of research, and I think, the website of all the speakers will be very important. Alexander is an employer of labor, so is Margaret. Grace researches this, opportunities and supports initiatives for empowerment. Terry does the same as well, Include SC for All. So I think these are important actors that you can engage with. The other question is from Chika Orakwe. She said, very insightful discussion. Various governments should be intentional in investing in their youth with relevant youth-friendly policies that favor and encourage them to thrive in a business environment. Absolutely, Chika. It was not a question, it was a comment. We agree with you. And someone says, we say the role of women are crucial. How can this be emphasized? I think I will throw this question to Terry. While Terry is figuring out her technology, Margaret, please. How can we emphasize the role of women? I know you touched on it a bit, but maybe you can recap. You're on mute. You're still on mute, Margaret.
Okay, so the role of okay, so the role of women are crucial. How can this emphasize? From what I was saying, it's sorry, I'm lost with the question. I'm just trying to recall, and so from what
the question was like, how can we encourage, women taking up space within the renewable energy or within the energy transition?
Yeah, I think Alexander was saying much about that, about the capacity building trainings for women and like raising more awareness out there about the benefits of energy access or green jobs and how it's beneficial for us women and why it's necessary for us to play active role in the sector. And yes, for me, I'm sure that is the key, like raising more awareness and having more capacity building trainings.
Absolutely. Thank you. The other question is from Iyang and Niedi. Sorry, Grace, did you want to say something?
I'd like to add
Please go ahead.
what she said. So I think that when we had this sort of affirmative action, in place, we had governments at the policy level actually bringing affirmative action policies. So I think that for us to bring women on board, say if we are going to give grants to, businesses, 1,000 businesses, governments actually have to actually put policies in place that we need to have about 40% or 50% of women. In so doing, this is going to encourage a lot of women into doing that. So I think that at the policy level or the governance level, we need to put in place structures to make sure that women are involved. If not, a lot of women, out of maybe lack of confidence, some social norms or things that they have gone through, may not necessarily be part of this green transition process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. Exactly.
Victoria, sorry to interrupt, but I think this panel itself is emphasizing it.
I agree, Annika. I agree totally. This is true. The other question from Bamidele Helen says, I'm so happy to be part of this program. My question is, how do you increase capital and visibility? I think Alexander can take on this question.
So how do you increase capital and visibility?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say one, for capital, if you're talking about resources in terms of scaling, I mean, there is need for you to build sustainably on what you have, because what you have is actually what will attract. Your track record basically is what will attract the right level of investment, right? So take, for instance, you want an investor to invest from a point of view on a 1 megawatt project. He wants to critically be sure that you have been able to do a 50 kilowatts. Have you done 100 kilowatts? You understand it critically for people. So, and that's why I talked about the fact that we need to be very intentional in the things that we do. It will interest you to know that when I ventured, with ACOB Lighting, we weren't primarily a renewable energy company. We were basically a street lighting infrastructure company, developing street lighting infrastructure, doing operations and maintenance of high density, both low density and solar street lights. So our entry into hardcore renewable was basically through street light infrastructure. So we had to build capacity, train people, identified who were the right partners, and that is how that path, started. So, and that's why I tell people, there is never a small part. People actually ventured into doing mega projects, but their trajectory was the fact that they actually started with a PICO system. And you know what a PICO system is? A PICO is almost like a torchlight. So you must identify, and there's an entry point. Yeah. The entry point is not the last. The entry point is just your ability to be able to, learn the ropes. And by the time you understand clearly, as you go, the picture becomes very clear. I don't know if I answer all the question. I think there's a second question.
You did. I think okay. It's clear. We have 7 minutes on the clock, so I'll try to be as fast as possible. Aniede Iyang is asking, are there trainings in this renewable energy for young women, and how can it be accessed for free? Yes, there are trainings. Grace, would I be right to say UNDP facilitates trainings? Is that correct?
I'd have to get back to you on that, but for my office, we don't. So I'd have to find out.
And maybe I would get back to you. I would definitely send you an email. Margaret, do you facilitate some of these kinds of trainings?
Yes, Women in Energy, we've done quite a lot of capacity building trainings,
okay.
From training how to design, improve cook stove, making briquettes, and also training women, young girls to be solar technicians, okay. Through the support of ECRE, UNDP, And also SC4 have their yearly like women in STEM training application, which is like totally free, and you can take advantage of that too.
Okay, so you've heard Margaret. You can take advantage of all of these opportunities she's mentioned. Idowu David said, how can we ensure that green energy initiatives are inclusive and provide opportunities for marginalized communities? I think Grace has spoken to that a lot. Margaret also. Terry as well also spoke to that. One thing that Terry said was radical transformation. You know, I underlined this. It's very important that the impact, the initiatives target radical transformation. The next question is from Yusuf. Grace says, what should we do? Yes, so this question is very interesting, and I think I'll come back to Alexander for this. The person is talking about credit, that people are always asking for credit, to buy on credit and pay later. So how do you handle business without giving credit within the an environment that supports credit?
You know, I would say that is where the place of your due diligence comes to place. That's where your due diligence comes to place. You know, there's no economy that doesn't even survive without credit. Today, we as micro utility companies, our debts are in billions. I'm not going to lie to you. Yes, because you know we raise money to be able to do this project, and you know, some ways, you know, get some level of grants. Sometimes we are able to repay with the receivables in terms of revenue generations from electricity purchase that the people make out of it. So it's always at every given point in your business, there's that point of due diligence where your conviction about this person and the reality. Are you getting me? You cannot put something on nothing. You can only put something on something, right? If an empty vessel says you should fill it in and you know there is a hole on this vessel, it will not sustain it. It will leak. So entrepreneurs must be, you know how hard you have worked to build your brand, to build your reputation, you know, you must be sure that whoever you're lending that, you're putting that product in its hand, be it as a lease or energy as a service, whatever it is, must have the ability to pay you back. They get to that point where there is no emotion attached, there's no sentiment attached, and it is called business.
Yes, no emotions, no sentiments attached. Alexander has said it all. We move on to Ode Friday. Ode says, what practical strategies or support systems can be implemented to help a passionate youth build a sustainable career and successfully set up a tech startup, particularly in the software, in brackets, soft load industry? I think Alexander can answer this question, but Ode Friday, I think I recognize your name. I will ask Alexander to answer this question and I will send you a response. The next is Nathaniel Olotu. Thank you for such an insightful session. Can you share insights on which sectors offer the highest untapped potential for youth employment within the green transition space? I think we've talked a lot about this. We have touched on this quite a lot. So please, Nathaniel, if you could watch the recordings when it's sent to you or uploaded on Include's YouTube page, please try to distill some of these opportunities, but they've been highlighted before now. Chika asked the question. She said, there are lots of cultural, religious, and political barriers against women in some regions in Africa, Nigeria inclusive. How can women navigate these barriers to find themselves in the energy transition space? I think Margaret touched upon this very strongly in her submissions. Terry also talked on this very passionately. So maybe, yeah, you could, you know, rewatch the session in a more calm environment, and you know they really had some gems to share. Isa Hassana says, please, what are the best practices for improving working capacity efficiency? Hassana, I know that you're registered for this event, which is why you're able to attend. So I would check for your email, and I hope I find it. And I think I will get Grace, Margaret, and Terry, to provide some responses here. There are so many questions. I'm sorry I can't read all of them. Yes, Aniedi, thank you for sharing your information. I've noted it. But there's a question from Edwin from Ghana. He said, I'm the key accountant manager of Eily Energy Ghana, a subsidiary of Eily Energy based in Germany. I have realized how difficult it is transitioning to solar energy in Ghana and Africa as a whole. Awareness is very low, even amongst the youth. How can we ensure that renewable energy initiatives like mine receive the utmost awareness? I think this is the last question we'll answer. I'm sorry to all others who, asked questions that we couldn't get to. We will send you emails, or we will have these questions answered and posted on the Include website. I would give this question I would open the floor from Anika to Terry, to Margaret, to Grace, to Alexander, and maybe starting with Anika. Do you have some gems to share with Edwin from Ghana, and any other person that thinks they could respond to this very quickly as we close? Please feel free to take up the mic from the panel.
Well, maybe very quickly, I mean, at Include, we've highlighted some solar initiatives, and we've done quite some research. So I would advise Edwin to go to our website and look at those. And perhaps we can also spotlight some of the initiatives that Edwin is doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Edwin, maybe you want to reach out to Include. As the executive director has said, we could spotlight some of the work that you're doing. Alexander, Grace, Margaret, any last words? Terry?
Yeah, sorry, you asked me a question about emphasizing the role of women, and I was locked out because of internet. But I quickly wanted to just share about advocating for systemic change. I feel like it's very, very important, even for us, to push for gender-responsive climate financing in the UN Gender Justice Climate Solutions. We need to demand corporate accountability. For example, requiring gender impact assessment for even energy projects, and we need to do a lot of research and documentation. I have not seen a research that has been done, even talking about how unpaid care work, the effect of unpaid care work, even in women, such that that's the reason why they are not even in the energy space, for instance. So we need to fund studies on women and paid labor in energy poverty. We need to highlight even successful feminist energy models that will influence policymakers. It's something that is very, very important even for us to push the women agenda in energy. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry. For those who are asking for the recordings, we will send it. For those who are asking that their questions be answered and posted, we will send it. For those who are asking for the websites of the panelists, we would also share this information in a broadcast email. Grace raised her hands. Grace?
Yeah, so I'd like to answer Edwin's question just because I'm a Ghanaian and I understand the context where he is coming from. So I don't think that awareness is low. I believe that for what he's doing, for instance, solar panels, people know about it, but affordability is the problem. So I think that for someone like Edwin, what he has to do is to partner with people across, people like Alexander, people across the continent to find more affordable ways, because these people that have to use the solar energy do not live in big houses or mansions. So how can we develop solar energy, solar panels that can actually be used but are cost effective? Trust me, I believe that if these things are more affordable, it will actually get the traction that it demands. But if for somebody getting, let's say, an average of $400 a month as their salary, they definitely cannot afford solar energy that is going to cost them about $1,500 or $2,000. So people know about it, but I believe that affordability is the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. So when it's affordable, Grace, if I hear you correctly, someone will tell someone, and someone will tell someone, and someone will tell someone else. So Edwin, there's this thing people say that if I know someone that knows someone that knows someone, and your best customers are the ones that go out to tell people about the work that you're doing. So take Grace's and Anika's feedback to heart. Maybe we need to rethink strategy. Thank you all so much. We have, I think we've heard it loud, we've heard it clear. Green jobs are not a luxury, they are a necessity. Youth inclusion is not a side note, it's supposed to be the headline. Labor-based incentives aren't just economic tools, they are instruments of justice. And I think every speaker highlighted this, and we cannot overemphasize it. So let's move from pilot projects to policies, from token youth panels to youth at the policy table. This isn't the end of the Zoom call. It's the beginning of a movement. I am so grateful for, or we are so grateful for, the high engagement. Sorry we couldn't come to all the questions, but we would answer these questions. We give you our word. Thank you, and thank you. Africa's youth are ready. If there's anything that this panel has taught me today, and the questions that were coming from engagements with attendees, is that Africa's youth are ready. Thank you all so much, and do have a good evening.